So this is my 1983 Suzuki DT-2. I've had this engine for about 5 or 6 years. It is a saltwater engine, unfortunately, and it was actually in California most of its life. This engine has been absolutely dead reliable. I mean, 1 or 2 pulls, it'll start right up and just absolutely run like a top. I love this engine. It weighs 18 pounds and really can do quite a lot for it just being a 2 horsepower. Unfortunately, it's had an intermittent cooling issue for the last 5 years. I've changed impellers, I put a new water pump housing on it, and it just kept on overheating. And 2 weeks ago, yes, I know this is February, I had it out in Ellicott Creek, and it just was sporadically pumping, then it would stop. And to make a long story short, it overheated really badly, and you know, I kept on checking it, but I didn't catch it in time, and I thought I damaged it, but I ended up tearing it down and found that the cylinder head was completely plugged with salt. So this water jacket here was completely filled. I'll try to input some pictures of it in this video of when I found it. I did clean it. I cleaned the water jacket out around the cylinder here. The cylinder looks pretty good. The bore looks in pretty decent condition. The head gasket was definitely blown out on it, so I was getting a little water intrusion in the cylinder, probably from when it overheated. So I just thought I'd take it apart. You know, this right here, my issue with it overheating was there was a lot of rust right here, chunks of rust and salt deposits in here, and I think that was my intermittent cooling issue. It would move around, plug, you shut the engine off, it would float down to the bottom. But I did try to clean that out as best as I could. Obviously, this engine wasn't flushed. But anyhow, I'm going to attempt to put this back together. I did order new head gasket, new power head gasket, new head studs, and I got a genuine Suzuki impeller for it. I had an aftermarket one, but honestly, it looks identical to the factory one, and it was working fine. I did replace the impeller housing a couple years back, and I put a quick paint job on this engine just to kind of clean it up. It was very, very pitted and corroded here. Paint job isn't great. I don't really care. This engine is a workhorse. I just ordered some decals for it just to kind of make it look, you know, a little bit better. This is the original color of the engine. Honestly, the power head has run very well for me, and again, it has been nothing but dead reliable. 1 or 2 pulls, starts up, and always just runs like a champ. So I don't want to give up on this little outboard. It's very valuable to my little fleet here, and it has just been a great workhorse. So I'm going to film the progression of putting this back together. I want to disclaim that I am not a mechanic. I'm an elementary ed teacher, but I have been farting around with this stuff since I've been a kid, tearing motors apart, and I've had a plethora of outboards. I have a collection in the other room of old engines, so I do have some skills. For the mechanics that are watching this, you know, you may cringe, I don't know, but I will try to get this engine running, and we'll go from there. So a lot of the threads are full of salt in here, and I actually ended up snapping a couple bolts here, which I did replace, or I have replacements. I'm going to quickly try to clean the threads using my Harbor Freight knockoff Dremel with just a little wire brush, just doing a little light cleaning with some penetrating oil, and then I am going to clean these stainless steel bolts. You can see all the salt on them, but I'm going to try my best to clean them, lubricate them, and just get every surface that I can clean, as well as the ones on the midsection here. I'm also going to grease the spline here on the output shaft. It's got some old grease. I will clean that up. I'm not messing with the carburetor. Like I said, this engine ran like a champ prior to the overheating issue. Again, the cylinder looks pretty good. You know, the rings, the piston. It still pulled pretty well. Seemed like it had pretty good compression. I did not throw a gauge on it, but I'm assuming that it is okay. This side of the piston was very clean due to this was the side that had the salt blockage, so the carbon wasn't really existent there, but over here you could see some carbon buildup where it was actually cooling properly. That water jacket wasn't as plugged. I did put a new kill switch on this engine a couple of years ago. Again, this has been my workhorse. This was on an inflatable Zodiac that I had for years, and now I just throw this on my aluminum boat. You know, we get a freak day in the wintertime, I throw it on and go putt-putting down the creek. It also has been a great backup. My larger outboard pooped out a couple of years ago, and this was a great backup. My girlfriend was able to pick it up, 18 pounds, and drop it off to me. So salt coming out. I'm just trying to wire brush these threads a little bit. I'll put a little lube in here, a looby-dooby, try to clean it up. Again, I just don't want any issues with the salt. I don't want to snap any bolts. Oh, you can try to clean up. Oh, wow. Holy cow, that's actually cleaning this up. I think there's a solution that I can make to kind of get the salt out of here. But, you know, my biggest thing is, as long as the ports are free and clear, this should work, you know, just fine. So I did put the power head back on the midsection, and what I did was I cleaned the spline, I lubed the spline, and I tried to sand the mating surfaces just a little bit better. There was some pitting that I just wasn't happy with. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crisscross with the 10mm socket and tighten these 6 stainless steel bolts with lock washers. You know, just crisscross, get even pressure, and just make sure that I don't bust the gasket out. And then once this is on, then I'm going to move over to placing the head and head gasket on the block here. And I did order new head bolts just because A, they stretch, and B, I snapped one of them getting it out, even though I heated and lubricated them. There was just so much salt that they didn't come out without a battle. So I did get new head bolts and obviously new head gaskets. So I don't know. I'll keep you up to date on the progress. My goal is I'm hoping tomorrow to crank her over and get her running. It's 23 degrees in Buffalo right now, so it's just not an ideal day to try to see if I can get this thing to fire up. So what I'm doing now is I am putting the head bolts on by hand, and I'm just doing it by hand with my extension here. There's a little bit of resistance on this one. I ended up pulling the head back off and chasing these threads again. Again, this was a saltwater engine, and it is just heavily, heavily corroded. So I've made some progress. The head's on, the fuel tank's back on and hooked up to the carburetor. The next thing I'm going to do is probably just reassemble the clamshell, you know, the cowling, and then I will get to this part. This is the impeller section, the water pump. The housing, I did do a really nice job trying to clean that up. I do have a brand new impeller. There's a little pin that goes in here. I'm going to take some 00 steel wool and clean this prop shaft up. There's a little bit of overspray on it. I probably should have covered that up. And I'm going to get the impeller on, impeller snug down the impeller housing. And then I'm going to leave the propeller off because I think tomorrow I'm going to start this up with in a bucket of water, and I don't want the wash from the prop to blow the water out. And I just want to make sure that she pumps water, that she runs pretty well, and then you know, I'll check everything out. I may actually even leave the clamshell off of it just so I can make sure that the gasket and everything is, you know, the gaskets are sealing up pretty well.
Well, it took one pull and it fired right up. I put gas in it, I choked it, and it barked right up. I've never seen this engine pump that kind of water. It's never done that since I've owned it. Pumping really good water. It's idled down. It used to die when it idled. The compression was really low. Now the compression, I mean, you can feel it when you pull the rope. You can just feel the compression. It's running like a champ. I'm going to take it for a quick rip. Well, it is running. It's got almost like a mist, and I'm wondering if I just don't have the spark plug wire on all the way, or I got a carb issue. That's a little bit. straightens out here a little bit, and then it'll fall on its face. Oh, maybe, yeah, hold on, a little bit there, but it is running. So I got some work to do. Whoops, just did something. And then if I get on the middle of the boat, that's doing pretty good. I gotta do a little tweak into the carb. So the engine was falling on its face when I'd give it full throttle. It wasn't real happy. I did check the fuel delivery. I get plenty of fuel out of here, and I had cleaned the filter recently. I never store this engine with gasoline. I always run non-ethanol, 50-to-1 mix, and then when I'm done running it, I run the gas out of the carburetor, and then obviously for winter storage, I drain the fuel out of the tank. Carburetor was a little bit loose, but I did find a major issue, and that was when I dropped the float bowl, the jet was at the bottom, so the jet fell out. So I think that was my main issue. But I did clean the jet, and I did clean the float bowl. Everything looks pretty good. Needle and seat, everything looks good. So I'm going to pop this puppy back together, and we will see what happens. So the jet was definitely the issue. Running like an absolute dream. This is a worthwhile project. I'm really happy with it. Back in action. I love this motor. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching this. Again, I'm not a mechanic. I'm just a backyard hack that has some ambition, and what's the worst that can happen? I messed up a 1983 motor. Take care.